Saturday, March 24th, 1984. Shermer High School, Shermer, Illinois. 60062. Dear Mr. Vernon, we accept the fact that we had to sacrifice a whole Saturday in detention for whatever it was we did wrong. What we did was wrong. But we think you're crazy to make us write an essay telling you who we think we are. What do you care? And you see us as you want to see us. In the simplest terms, the most convenient definitions. You see us as a brain, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a criminal. Correct? That's the way we saw each other at 7 o'clock this morning. We were brainwashed.
Sword of omens, give me sight beyond sight.
Greetings, Starfighter. You are about to listen to the totally super awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast. Always remember, no matter where you go, there you are. Ready Player One.
All right, this is 80s Reboot Overdrive, and I am Dave. And I am actually at a very much different location than I usually am because I'm usually stuck in the basement of my house. So I've actually been, unshackled from the basement, and I came out and got some fresh air for a change. Mm-hmm. And I'm here at the Captain's Pod.
Yeah. I am the captain, and with me is Michelle. She is our field specialist as part of the Captain's Pod. We do a variety of podcasts on the Captain's Pod, but a lot of it is focusing on mental health and self-help and stuff like that. And so we do the Captain's Pod as a podcast onto its own. Michelle hosts a podcast called HSP SOS. It's for highly sensitive persons, which is kind of a new designation. I mean, there's not too much information out about it.
Right. I can talk for myself.
No, go ahead.
Okay. It is radio. No, I'm just kidding. No, it is highly sensitive people are just people that have like a heightened nervous system, like a sensitivity to sound, sight, anything going on. They might have more like intense feelings, and it's actually like scientifically proven. It's in animals as well that it's like 20% of the population. So like I get really overstimulated easily. If I go, he's a musician. If I go out to a concert or something, like by the end of the night, I'm drained. So yeah, we do a show about that. And the feel specialist, I just talk about feelings. I'm not like feeling people like as a specialist. Like we didn't really explain that well. But, yeah.
So if I cry at the end of some kind of wonderful, does that make me a highly sensitive person?
Not always, but it could. Yeah, you could be watching something and you get kind of emotional, or you notice how people are feeling, or you get kind of embarrassed easily. Right. And for men, it's kind of hard. We have actually a whole thing we talk about. Like, there's a bad stereotype about like what a sensitive man is. You can be very strong and just a caring individual and empathetic and be a sensitive male.
Now, I promise that if I'm watching some kind of wonderful, it's just dirt in my eye. It's not really crying.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
no, that's the whole thing about it, though, is we talk, like all the stuff we do with the Captain's Pod, we say it's geeky fun with all the feels, and that's basically because, the same people that were, growing up geek, when we were growing up, it was not cool to be geek. Nowadays it is.
Correct.
But when we were growing, that was the kind of thing that we were trying to hide, and it was because we were so sensitive, and so it's like those highly sensitive persons. I mean, a lot of the geeks, that we grew up with, they were highly sensitive people. Right. I mean, because you feel things more deeply. You care about the characters so much more deeply than everybody else, and everybody's like, why do you give such a crap about these made up things? And it's like, but you don't understand, they're my friends, So you get really passionate about it.
It's The Hobbit. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Get behind me on this one.
Yeah. And then one of the other shows that we do is In-X Adventures, in which I am obviously an extrovert and Michelle is an introvert. Hard to believe it. She does great on the microphone, but she is an introvert, and so with the two of us in a relationship together, there's just quite a few of adventures that occur. So we do a show called In-X Adventures, where we talk about a lot of the Myers-Briggs personality type things that as far as the stereotypes, and that's, I believe, why we were having this conversation today. It was
Right.
kind of that, right?
Right. And that's exactly it. Is we there was a group that was a closed group in Facebook. So all you listeners, you're not allowed in unless you're podcasters.
Right.
So hush, hush. We didn't let the secret out. But we connected and we started having a dialogue back and forth around possibly talking about the archetypes of 80s teen movies. And then that kind of morphed into what you just talked about a moment ago, was around how when we were kids in the 80s, there really was the I'm geeky, nerdy kind of person, but it wasn't like loud and proud versus where we are in 2015, where it's almost like a badge of honor. And you're like, well, why? How come you're not going to a comic book show? You should be going.
Everybody's
Because everyone's going to those things.
Right.
So, it's like, so that kind of where the conversation had started on Facebook and Twitter between us, as far as what we wanted to talk about.
Right. And then you brought up something interesting, and that was the stereotypes of the epitome of 80s movies, the John Hughes movies.
Yes.
And that very much interested Michelle as far as like breaking down some of those stereotypes.
Right. Well, I'm a teacher as well. So, and I teach middle school. So that is sort of the age when kids are starting to define themselves. So those like archetypes or those very, like those labels you put on people are still very popular at that age.
Right.
So it just was something like hit home with me. And I think it's important. A lot of people kind of go through that struggle, like where you fit in and what group you're part of and all of that.
Yeah. And it's like, we were looking at, like, we're talking about like some of these characters and how like the geek character, I mean, I think for a lot of us, those are the ones that we related to.
Correct.
Those ones in the movies, because we were, I mean, I don't know. I know that I was, watching Star Wars pretty much every day when I came home from school, and after I was done watching G.I. Joe and Transformers and stuff like that. And
For me, it was Thundercats and
sure.
Visionaries.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So same flavor, but yeah, I'm with you. I was in high school, definitely the nerdy type. I was the one that was hanging out in the library, reading The Hobbit. I in the evening time doing the player characters for Dungeons and Dragons kind of a thing. So that was definitely my wheelhouse, and it wasn't one of those things where I went back to school the next day and go, oh, geez, I created this druid character. Let's talk about it.
Right.
It was kind of like everyone else was your stereotypical jock or, prom queen, if you want to get into the labels of, the Breakfast Club. It was kind of really that varied. I'm just going to keep that kind of suppressed, back then, and it's not, and I don't know why exactly that was back in the 80s, but for some reason, that's just the way it rolled. Even though some of the John Hughes movies, if you watch them, they almost gave some good credit to those type of characters because people started to evolve and understand them.
Yeah.
So I mean, for you two, what were you like in high school?
Oh, well, I wasn't. See, I'm an INFJ. That's I like to say that. That's like 1% of the population if you do the Myers-Briggs. So I would say like in high school, I was friends with everyone, but I didn't really belong to a group. So like I was friends with people that were jocks or cheerleaders or theater kids or art kids or musicians, geeky kids, and I really fit in well and I genuinely liked people, but then I also had this sense of like I didn't really belong to any one of those groups in particular. So for me, there were times where I felt like, I had a lot of like acquaintances, but I didn't know like who my core group of people were, which has kind of been my thing like throughout life because I do have a lot of varied interests. So it's kind of like on another, dimension of, I guess. I liked Hello Kitty. And I'm trying to think, like when you talk about the geeky stuff, I always try to think of like what kind of geeky things. I like to read, like history. So, I was really good in school and, I liked school and everything, so I guess I was geeky in that way.
I guess if you were at the Breakfast Club and you were in detention on Saturday, which one would you be most like, or would there be like a blend of those characters?
I would probably be more like Basket Case because I probably just wouldn't want to talk to
the Ali Sheedy
character. I would be like Ali Sheedy, and she like appealed to me. I just wouldn't really want to talk to any of them. I would probably go in another room while they were talking, and I would probably be mad that they were, dancing around, and I would wonder where the teacher was at, why he wasn't supervising detention.
Right. Okay.
That's me.
Yeah.
As long as you have the Captain Crunch sandwich. You're okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I don't know. For me in high school, it was it was a mixed bag because I mean, in one in one facet, like I was really just kind of, I want to say relegated to the bottom of the totem pole. A lot of my friends were like the quote unquote burnouts and stuff like that. But then like, I was also like the only singer. I was the singer in the only band in our high school. So I kind of had like my musician friends and stuff like that. And ultimately what ended up coming down to me was, if you remember the American Pie movie, I mean, I know we're busting out of the 80s with that one, but there was a quote in that when
I gotta leave now, we're out of the 80s.
Yeah, I know. The Jason Biggs character says, I was a band geek, but I never had the instrument. And that was what I was, is ultimately I found in my junior year of high school that I was playing bass, and I started playing in the jazz band, and I finally felt like I found a home. I was like, these are my people. And now finally I figured out like these are the people that I should have been hanging out with the entire time, but I just was like just late getting there because I didn't start playing music until my sophomore year of high school. So that was essentially where I was. I mean, I don't know if I can relate directly to anybody in like say Breakfast Club right now. I mean, I would say when I was a kid, probably more like the Anthony Michael Hall character, but then now probably more like Judd Nelson because I'm kind of involved a bit.
So you kind of morphed.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say, I mean, college was a definite changing time in my life, and gaining, self-confidence and things like that I did not have, when I was growing up as a kid. So, I don't know. So breaking that stuff down. So I am an ENFP. That is my designation now, which is, right? That's me.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
That's you.
Yeah.
I keep track of all this.
So in the Myers-Briggs scale of things, I don't know if your listeners are familiar, but like these lettering things that the Myers-Briggs thing designates are obviously like I am ENFP, that starts off with extrovert. She's INFJ, it starts out with introvert. And then you want to kind of break down no, you don't want to break down.
You're putting me on the spot, and I'm an introvert, and I don't have notes on this, but no, I will.
Yeah.
So then the middle letters have to do with, are you intuitive? And we're both intuitive versus, thinking. Like, do you think through everything, or are you intuitive? There's feeling. So the F stands for we're more in tune with our feelings. And then my J has to do with, it's called judgment. So I'll look at a situation, take in all of the information around me, and I'll make a logical judgment on what I should do.
She sees big picture,
yeah.
Whereas on my end of it, it's perceiving. So I'm perceiving whatever is being done to me.
Okay.
So,
right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's all these there's an online. It's fun because there's an online test that's really easy. I mean, it's not the official Myers-Briggs, but it's pretty good because I've had it done multiple times. You just answer some questions online, and it gives you this whole thing and tells you all of your strengths and weaknesses and how to have good relationships. And I mean, it's kind of interesting when you read it. You're like, oh, how can an online test be so accurate? But it really is.
Okay.
And you read through it and you're like, wow, this is kind of cool. It's describing me, because I've had people take it that are yeah, whatever, it's some goofy online test, it's not going to tell me anything, and then they hate admitting that, wow, this sounds just like me. It's funny.
And then it's fun because once you find out what you are, there's memes for everything. You can find out who you are in Star Wars, what your personality type is in all of these different
different comic books too,
yeah.
Marvel comics,
yeah,
or
Marvel.
What character would you be if this was your Myers-Briggs,
right? Or
type.
example, ENFP, I would be Anna from Frozen. Do I need to know
princess?
that?
Not really.
No, not really.
But,
no. That's really off
But
topic.
it is kind of interesting to see, equating to characters that in films and stuff like that, or
right.
in comic books or whatever, and just being okay, that's my personality type. I should be able to relate to that character, and then just be well, I do, or I don't, or whatever. So it's always kind of interesting to kind of break down those things. So we were talking about the John Hughes movies. I mean, specifically, I guess The Breakfast Club. I mean, we can kind of break down that a little bit, I think, because I got the designations at least somewhat. So the Anthony Michael Hall character, the brain, if you will,
right?
He's INTP.
Okay.
So that's you got your introvert. The N would be intuitive, so as opposed to that, and then the thinking and perceiving. But it's he's all about what is being done to him. That's that
right.
P, that perceiving part of it. So I mean, that's why I guess I don't know. That's why I think I gravitated towards that as a child. Yeah. Whereas the Judd Nelson character, the criminal, if you will.
Well, hold on. He's what's been happening to him. So, when he goes into his dialogue about he can't have a bad grade happen to, because, that's unacceptable. So that's kind of how that translates then.
Yeah, because essentially it's going to come down to his parents coming down on him.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's his thoughts about it. He's not thinking like bigger picture.
Okay.
There is a point in the movie, though, where he kind of steps outside of himself, and I think it was him, where he's talking about, when he, looks at himself from, the outside and looks on himself.
Yeah, I remember that. Right.
He doesn't like what he sees, So, I think that's kind of an interesting, I don't know, towards the end you see a little bit of a change in him, maybe, or he's really just looking at, himself in a different way towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, and these things these labels don't stay with you. I mean, that's like I said, your personality changes over time, and I believe that people evolve quite often. I mean, if you think about I always equate it to the 7-year itch. You know what I mean? Like every 7 years, I think you are a completely different person than you were 7 years ago. I mean, some people still will retain their core values and things like that, but I mean, I know that I'm a way different person than I was 7 years ago and 7 years before that. I mean, that's just kind of like you evolve and your opinions evolve, and that also it changes the way. I mean, like I said, I went from being a complete introvert to an extrovert, and there's still going to be some leeway on a daily basis on those types of things. I mean, everybody is an ambivert to some degree, right?
Yeah. You're not 100% introverted or 100% extroverted. And even when you take the test, it'll have scales of how introverted. Now I'm 79% introverted or something like that. Yeah, so it can vary. And then if you're more towards the middle, and actually our personality types, typically the two of us, we're the two personality types that are supposed to be really well suited for one another. But we are both kind of ambiverted as well. We can go, people will see me and confuse me as being an extrovert because I can talk, and if I'm comfortable, I'm very outgoing. And then other times, I don't want to go out at all or talk to anybody. I'm done with people for the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to ruin our finale, but I'm curious now. I mean, if the people spend a whole afternoon or day together, Saturday detention, in this case, in the case of the Breakfast Club, could their letters change because of the way that the conversations that they've had, and they got to know each other and they kind of readjusted the way they were thinking about each other? Could that change, that one, event change kind of how they outlook on things?
I think so. I mean, Carl Jung, who is the psychologist that came up with this scale, actually says that people's interactions are like chemical reactions. You can't meet someone or have an encounter with someone without them being changed in some way. So your environment and your experiences and people that you talk to and open up to can definitely change your perspectives or have you kind of fluctuate on that scale a little bit, maybe make you a little more introverted or a little more extroverted, just depending.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, as your opinions and your thoughts on things change over time, it is definite that those things could evolve. I mean, if you have an experience that changes you, or suddenly your eyes are opened up to something, absolutely, you can change one of those letters in those descriptions, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I really relate to something else now, or somebody else. And like you said, that changing over from thinking about just that sense of self, to thinking about that bigger picture sense, where you said there's that moment in the movie where you feel like there was kind of like a changeover or a realization. Right. It might not be a complete changeover in that moment, but if his thinking does maintain on that path, it could permanently.
Yeah, you see, and good characters evolve, and that's one thing I think a lot of these John Hughes movies, even though they're stereotypical characters, they're pretty complex characters because throughout the movie they have conversations like that with other people, and you see a little bit more deeply into them than what everyone else sees on the outside. Mm-hmm. So definitely.
Yeah.
So you've got the initials for all the characters over there?
Well, everybody, there's only so much that you can break down, from watching the movie, because you're only going to find out so much about the characters. But, the other one that seems to be fully laid out is the Judd Nelson character, which is
Bender,
the criminal. Yes.
Right.
ENTP. So the E being the extrovert, of course.
Of course.
And then the N would be the intuitiveness, right? So he goes off of feelings, and then the T is thinking, and then the P would be perceiving. So again, he's thinking about what's happening to him,
right?
In his world.
Yeah.
So that's the breakdown on Bender there. yeah, I mean, you can definitely see that. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up too is before we get too far into this is the E and I thing, the introvert extrovert thing, and we should probably go into a little bit about the perception of what people think it means to be an introvert.
People, because there's been a lot more recently. Susan Cain wrote a book called Quiet, The Power of the Introvert in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And it was a New York Times bestseller, and it actually sort of gave power to a lot of these people that are quiet. And the misconception is that they are shy or that they're kind of awkward. And a lot of times your introverted people are really deep thinkers. They love doing things. They might be they might want to do something more online versus have like an actual conversation. They do better in small groups of people versus like a whole group of people. And it just kind of really changed the way I know as an educator. A lot of times school in itself is really an extroverted experience. It's like competition all the time. Introverts don't like competition. It's loud things, bright lights. And so, for me, school was really annoying, even though I did well in it and I became a teacher, go figure. But it's crazy. Like the lunchroom, the hallways, everything about the day is draining for an introvert. So it just was like, it's just very interesting, from a teaching perspective now. Like when I do things in the classroom, I think about, okay, what would different personality types enjoy? Am I doing like way too many like big group activities? Am I doing way too many competitive types of things? Should I like change how I'm structuring things in my classroom? And it's really helped me as an educator, and it helped me know about myself because I always felt like something was really wrong with me. My mom and dad would always be when I was a kid because I didn't go out a lot. I didn't date till I was like 18. I didn't really care. I thought the boys were stupid that I went to school with, and I didn't really want to date them just because you're supposed to date mom, dad. I don't care. They're annoying. I don't want to date them. And so I always felt like there was something wrong with me, like I wasn't being social enough or, being the way, even like you see in movies, how people are. I wasn't really that way. And so I felt something was wrong with me. But this kind of gave me power and talking to other people like that too, that felt the same way as I did, and we connected. And now it's like, okay, I do a podcast. I talk to people all the time. I'm very comfortable online. He starts talking about doing a live event or something or streaming live, and I'm like, what are you talking about? No, like, I get
anxiety.
I'm getting anxiety. I mean, the first few times we did a podcast, I spent an hour and a half or something, like freaking out, having a panic attack because I did not want to talk on the microphone, and I'll get really bad anxiety sometimes, and I have to really work through that. But I have. But yeah, it's just really let me know a little bit more about myself and other people.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, cool.
And I think that the introvert versus extrovert thing, people tend to think that introverts are just like, oh, they're like hermits and they never come out and see people, and extroverts are they're like, always just like loud
on
and boisterous.
stage, yeah.
But really what that designation means is it is how you recharge your energy is essentially what it comes down to. So like if you are an introvert, you are recharged by being by yourself. You need time to collect your thoughts. You need time to sit there and just be like, okay, I need a minute to myself. I'm just going to collect my thoughts. And that's how you recharge. I mean, you might be, watching TV by yourself or whatever. An extrovert recharges by interacting with other people. That's what it means.
Okay.
Yeah. So like,
all right, that makes it simple.
That's what I'm saying. Is
okay.
It's simple.
It's tough because people mostly just think it's like, well, you're an extrovert, so you're loud all the time or whatever, and you're an introvert, so you're just over in the corner reading a book. That's not what it means. It means that's how you recharge. Either you like being around people or you don't like being around people. But again, there's no like 100% on the scale either way.
Right.
While I like I said, I designate myself as an extrovert, it's part of my job. I'm talking on a microphone, I'm on a stage with a band. That's what I do. But then there's also sometimes when I'm like, I'm just going to Netflix binge, just leave me alone for a while, because that's how I feel like I need to recharge in that moment.
Right.
So, I mean, you can go back and forth on that scale, but it's kind of like what you have to find is where you kind of primarily dwell. If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot even at my day job, is that there's some people that are more comfortable going to go talk to somebody, but then there's others that would just opt to just send an email or communicate via IM rather than go have a conversation.
Yeah.
So I could see that as being the breakdown between the introvert, extrovert,
Right.
the way you're describing it.
Yeah, definitely.
And we were talking about that, like being via text. Like for introverts, I mean, I think that's like the email thing. You talked about how big of a thing that was for you, and being able to script your thoughts and then revise before, sending a message to somebody.
Because I'm not good on the spot, because I have just processing, because I'm a highly sensitive person. Like, I get really flustered in conversation, so I almost have to map out or frame conversations with people that I know I'm going to have, like, important conversation. So I will have, like, bullet points or notes, even if I never look at my notes. Like, I just have them and I know they're there. So I would prefer,
They're your happy place.
Yeah, my happy place. Like sometimes he'll be like, "You can just call me," and I'm like, I don't want to talk on the phone. Introverts hate talking on the phone, like, because I feel like it's really disconnected. Like, I can't see you or feel your energy right here. I'm just listening to you, and now I can't do anything else, and I'm stuck on the phone, and it's really hard for me. So I can write really well, though. Like, I will write like a really long, beautiful text message, pages and pages long.
Which I will respond with K.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other story.
Yeah. I know how that is. Going back to the 80s theme, do you have a favorite, John Hughes movie?
I do. Mine is Pretty in Pink.
Pretty in Pink, okay.
Yeah. I loved the female character Andy in that. I like the whole concept. And she's sort of that archetype of, like, okay, the poor girl, and then she kind of gets hooked up with the rich kid, I grew up very blue-collar family, very poor, and her friend, she had like a friend that was kind of geeky. I totally had a friend that everyone kind of made fun of me for hanging out with, that I think had a secret like crush on me, but I didn't really like him, but we were just really good friends. And so, I liked how she was like a really strong female character. I felt, not letting people kind of get to her. Like, people were kind of rude when she started. Was his name Blaine? Is it
Blaine?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like some of the other of like Blaine's friends were really rude to her, but she really kind of kept her dignity and didn't let people see her get weak. And that's reminded me a lot of myself growing up. Like, if someone said something to me, like, I would not allow them to see me get down. Like, I might go cry in my room later, but I wasn't going to, out of a state of pride, let them get to me. So I love that movie. I think it's cute. She makes a really cute dress at the end. I just liked it.
So does that make you Ducky or Blaine?
Oh, jeez.
Oh, gosh. You are way more Ducky. Let's not even pretend for a minute.
Well, I'm gonna flip movies over, because I'm gonna go over to Ferris Bueller.
Bueller?
Yeah, Bueller. Because there's some debates as to what Ferris is. I mean, some people say that he is ENFP. Some people say he's ESTP or ENTP. There's all this debate about it. All I know is, like, when I was watching that movie for the first time growing up, I related to Cameron more than any of the other characters.
Oh, jeez.
So, I mean, that was really a lot more like what I was like, I think. I was like, I get that. I get that guy who's just like, I'm just laying here, and he's really just depressed.
He's just so
he just doesn't
depressed.
want to do anything. And then, get a peek at the girl by the pool changing her clothes.
Sure.
That's so awesome.
Sloan.
Sloan.
Yeah.
If you're sticking with the John Hughes movies, I got to go Weird Science.
That was good, yeah.
Just for the fact that I was at home with a computer and to be the idea of being able to build Kelly LeBrock.
Yeah.
Of course, I would have loved to have been able to do that. But
that's every
I was
shy
more
kid.
War Games, I think.
Oh,
than-
War Games is awesome.
But that wasn't John Hughes.
No, but I know.
that was
It's
kind
just
of the
like
influence of my whole computer career, is because I always wanted to hack in and play the Whopper.
Yeah. No,
Would you like to play a game?
Exactly.
Well, we talked about Weird Science because that was one of the first movies I remember watching, and I liked it. I feel like it taught me some things because I was pretty young when it came out, and I remember Robert Downey Jr. was in it, and then
Yes.
I think that's when
Very young Robert Downey Jr.
I think that's when I learned I liked Bad Boys from that
all right.
movie. I don't know. I was young. I think I was 9, but it was like a really just a fun movie. It was like silly, and I enjoyed it a lot.
One of my earlier podcasts, I was doing an interview with this artist that were part of this For the Record, Dear John Hughes, which was a musical that was in Chicago.
Cool.
And we talked about John Hughes movies because it was required watching for them before they did their production. And what the production was kind of a meld of all the John Hughes movies, but also in a musical type of theme. And when we were talking about Weird Science, their favorite scene was a part where Anthony Michael Hall had gotten drunk at the bar, and he's just speaking jive and stuff. And so we were just completely laughing about that, loving that
It's
moment.
a hilarious movie. I love it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Weird Science.
No, it's awesome.
No. And it's great, and to have the Mad Max characters show up, and not specifically the Mad Max character, but those very
the motorcycle gang,
motorcycle
right?
gang.
Yeah. He's got the gun, and he thinks it's a squirt gun.
Yep.
But yeah, good times.
And I mean, what shy kid in the '80s didn't want to just build their own girl?
Right?
Because it was so much easier than having to talk to one.
Jeez.
I'll just build one, jazzercise, and shower with them.
Yeah.
Nice.
Right.
But don't forget to hook up the doll.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You never know what's going to happen if you don't hook up the Barbie doll.
What else? The other significant one that I would say is 16 Candles. I don't know if we really touched on that one too much.
16 Candles. No, we really didn't touch on that one. The one that that's always like one of my favorites is one that I alluded to earlier was Some Kind of Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I even started this like a Twitter debate going on was who likes the what's her name, Samantha Jones. I got the main character name wrong. I'm sure it was Watts and Amanda Jones. There
Amanda
you go.
Jones, yes.
Yeah. So Watts versus Amanda Jones. So if you had to pick one, that you kind of crushed on back then, which one would it have been?
Watts.
See, I was going Amanda Jones.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I've never seen that movie.
You've never seen it? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I would come to the John Hughes movie podcast without seeing the movie.
That's
so
okay.
my style. I feel bad now. I didn't do my homework.
No, it's a great movie, though. I
should
highly
watch it.
recommend
I'll
it
watch
if you get a chance to.
I saw Curly Sue.
There's a rumor.
I don't remember that one being on the list.
There is a rumor that Some Kind of Wonderful makes Dave cry. There's a rumor.
No. It's dirt in my
Dirt in
eye.
his
Really.
eye.
It's just
Well,
dirt.
I'm going to have to
It's-
watch
no.
it now. Okay, I will. It wasn't. Did he do She's Having a Baby? Because I've seen that one.
Let's see here.
He may have been a producer, maybe.
All right, I'm
Maybe.
going to go through the list here.
Oh.
Here's what we got.
Because he's written movies that direct, but we're looking at movies he's directed, right?
This is going by most popular
Right,
first,
right, kind
Gotcha.
of, yeah.
according
Okay.
to the Google.
According
yeah,
to
I'm
Google,
sure
well, if
it's
it's on the internet,
the
it's got to be
Google.
true.
The Google.
I'm sure it's Ferris Bueller.
All right, now Breakfast Club,
Whoa, okay.
and then Ferris Bueller,
Okay.
16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, Weird Science, Home Alone.
All right.
Didn't realize that was him.
He had Beethoven too.
Vacation, National Lampoon's Vacation.
Oh, yeah.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Some Kind of Wonderful, Uncle Buck, Christmas Vacation, Home Alone 2, She's Having a Baby. You're right.
Okay, cool.
He also did Home Alone 3 and Curly Sue. You're right. Mr. Mom.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mr. Mom. Okay. 2x4, 2x5, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
European Vacation. Class Reunion. That's another National Lampoon movie. That was 82. I don't know that one. Baby's Day Out, Dennis the Menace, Great Outdoors, Career Opportunities, Beethoven. Oh my gosh, there's a whole lot. Made in Manhattan, Flubber.
We're way out of the 80s now.
Yeah, we're way out of the 80s. You're just totally. No,
sorry.
Yeah, when I was looking before, I was like, there's ones he's directed, and then there's ones like he did writing on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's like a mix of things. But
Yeah.
definitely the big ones from the 80s, like Breakfast Club, 16 Candles.
Yeah, even Great Outdoors. That was 88. But yeah,
Now he's just scrolling.
All right,
he's never.
I'm sorry.
We're
Just
not
put the
getting him
phone
back.
down.
Put the phone
I'm sorry.
away.
I'm sorry.
But so I mean, we talked about this a little bit with the back in the 80s, where it was kind of like, the nerdy geeky person was kind of not loud and proud like they are in the current day times. When do you think that kind of flipped?
Well, I mean, now Comic-Cons are not. They're not like geek. They're pop culture. I mean, because that's what it is. I mean, it's
Geek is chic.
exactly. It's all come over. So I mean, you've got look at the build up for Star Wars now.
Right.
Look at Marvel cannot make a flop. They really can't. So I mean, I think it's gone hand in hand with all of that stuff. Like once all of a sudden superhero movies came to the forefront, I think that was the big changeover. That all of a sudden it was like bam. And then I mean, some of the
maybe
sci-fi stuff.
the Spider-Man movies, like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, maybe around that time frame.
Perhaps. I mean, that was, I would say, because that was still a little bit like, I mean, the people that were really excited for it were obviously the hardcore comic book geeks, but then, it crossed over into, I mean, to the point where, like, now my kids grew up with those movies. and they're now 12 and whatnot. So it's like now it's now it's been passed down. I think that's a big part of it too, is that it's passing on to the next generation, and all of a sudden that next generation thinks it's cool.
Yeah.
So now it's cool because the young kids think that it's cool.
Yeah. Well, I have to say something though. I think it's different for females. Like growing up in that time period, I felt like the '80s was like a really hard time period for me because I was someone that liked to read. I liked to learn. You didn't see a lot of like really intelligent like females or nerdy females being glamorized. It was really, are you the hot girl that everybody's trying to date, or oh, you're the girl that's poor or not that cute that we have to do a makeover on, and now you've got to get the guy. Those were kind of like weird experiences for me. Like I didn't relate to a lot of the female characters, and I think over time you're starting to see stronger female like characters. And then my daughter, who is 8, she's totally into like Minecraft and comic books, and she watches Supergirl, and it's like we were saying, it's like kind of cool now. But I'm happy because it's like that's something she genuinely likes, and it's like she doesn't feel like she has to go put on like some cute dress or play princess or something to kind of fit in. Like I feel like there's more leeway for kids to kind of be in different groups more so than maybe when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Did you relate at all to like the Molly Ringwald character in 16 Candles?
Yeah, I did. I liked,
because she wasn't the archetype that you're talking about,
right.
Where
yeah.
she wasn't like the prom queen that we get from the Breakfast Club,
and,
but she was kind of, I don't even know how to explain. I mean, it was just a common woman, common girl kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at the end, she gets the hot guy.
Right. Yeah. See, I liked the movie up until that point. Like, right.
Up until the end.
Yeah, until the end when it's like all about getting the cute guy. But no, like her character, she's kind of cynical.
Hey, wait a second.
She's kind of cynical.
Yeah, Ducky, come on.
Come on. Quiet over there. No, she was in the movie. She was kind of cynical a little bit, and her sense of humor kind of reminded me of mine. And yeah, she wasn't like the typical girl, and she did like real like things that were happening to her, like her parents were getting her birthday, and just it was just kind of like a weird experience like for her. And yeah, I did relate to her character, and I think that's why I like Pretty in Pink. I felt that the character Andy was more complex maybe than some of the other characters. Like I watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and I'm like, I can't tell you one thing about Sloane. Like what's her personality? Like okay, she changes like at the pool, right? And he sees her in her swimsuit. You remember that part, but like what other part? Like I don't know much about her, so I don't really relate in that way. But that's probably just my female perspective.
Well, there's part where she's blowing kisses at Ferris's dad in the taxi. So there's that.
There's that too. I didn't remember that part, guys. Sorry. That's more in your mind.
The bigger question is, did you ever give somebody your underwear in order to make them come off as cool?
No, I did not.
Okay, see.
Yeah, but there's always time.
Well, if you do that, do it for a box of floppy disks.
I will
because
definitely.
Those are expensive.
Hey, yeah, enough definitely.
To steal a line.
Floppy disks.
Floppy disks.
Awesome.
Yeah. People still use those?
Yeah.
Yeah, great memories.
Yeah.
Great memories.
Well, I mean, I don't know, the going back to thinking about the kind of the crossover that happened. I mean, we are on a show called 80s Reboot in the title. I mean,
yes.
You look at like the Transformers movies and just like all of this stuff that like, it's like our childhood, has exploded onto like a bigger scale now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So.
And Transformer movies, of course, you're going to have Megan Fox, so thank you for bringing that memory up. But you're right. I mean, there was definitely something, and I don't know if we can attribute it to the Spider-Man movie, for the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies to kind of really put it mainstream, and everybody kind of really embraced it and started going, oh yeah, let me go check that out. And then, as you were saying, kind of spawned from the memories of what we were doing as kids, and then we kind of brought that onto our kids.
Yeah.
And then, they go, okay, yeah, all right, I can accept that. And, oh, yeah, Dad's got this, his Empire Strike Back collection, with the Darth Vader collector case, and which I just, brought out and showed my youngest daughter.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm helping make, some geek connection there.
Exactly.
So that I can have somebody go to comic book shows with me. But, it's kind of interesting how, maybe it's those things that we were doing as kids back in the 80s when we were, our geeky, nerdy ways. and kind of bringing those out and, refreshing those and sharing those with the younger generation.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what's doing it.
The struggle was real in the 80s, man. It was real. Did you grow up around here?
I did not.
Okay. So I grew up in Chicagoland, and I remember coming home from school, and at lunchtime, at noon, I had what is that, kindergarten, and then I had a morning kindergarten, and I remember I would be able to come home and watch Spider-Man on Channel 32, and growing up, and this was like the 1967 Spider-Man cartoons.
So we're not talking Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
No. I'm talking like this was like the 67 Spider-Man, but they would air it on, at like lunchtime here. It was like that, and then like Tom and Jerry or whatever, which again, Tom and Jerry, awesome. But but it's like then it was like once I had gotten older, then I was like, if I rushed home really fast, I might be able to catch Challenge of the Super Friends,
Sure.
something like that.
Good stuff there.
As I know you guys were talking about cartoons on one of your recent episodes, 80s cartoons.
Yes.
But yeah, like that one was one that was just like, it's really hidden in that memory, because it's like I was so young when seeing that stuff, but like I said, that's something that like it was really hard to come by, like that superhero stuff then, and now it's just like, I mean, think about the toys that we had then,
right?
You know what I mean? And the toys that there are now, that it's just like I can't buy anything, because I'm just like, if I buy one thing, I'm going to want to buy everything.
Right. There's just not enough money in the world,
It's
because
true.
it's like there's too much good stuff that's out there, and of course, the whole revival around Star Wars isn't helping me either, because it's like everything that's out. And of course, I want that little robot thing, the BB-8.
Oh, yeah. It's so
like,
cute.
come on. It's just, thank you, marketing geniuses, for creating all this great stuff.
Oh, and they play to girls too, because like just like you look at Hot Topic or some different places like that, and it's like they'll have like dresses and like really cute clothes too, and things like for like the female audience as well. My daughter sees stuff and she's like, oh, I want that too. And I mean, it's just amazing, just like the amount of merchandising that they do with that now.
Right. And then there's that whole marketing for cosplayers and things like
definitely.
that. Yeah.
But I think what you're talking about is that I think going back to the 80s, I mean, like if we look at the stereotypes that we're talking about, like with the Breakfast Club, I mean, it was like you almost felt like you had to force yourself into fitting into one of those stereotypes. Because, it was just that. It was like, are you a jock? That was essentially what the questions was. It's like, who are you? Are you a jock? Are you a geek? Or whatever the things
the
were.
The princess, the criminal, the athlete, the brain, the basket case, yeah.
And it's almost like that was all there was. Where it's like now, because we're all so connected, it's like, well, now people are realizing, well, you can be into whatever you're into. It doesn't matter. But it's like, and there's such a great anti-bullying thing going on,
right,
in all over the world now, which is amazing. I think that's really the changeover right there, because now kids know that they can be into whatever they want, and it's not a big deal. Where it was like back then, it was like, if somebody saw that, I had a WWF magazine, like a wrestling magazine or something, and be like, hey man, what are you, gay? What are you looking at? It's like, I don't know. I like the characters.
Yeah. But I think that
Roddy Piper was my favorite.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah.
But I think that's what John Hughes was like. If you're like really look at his movies, like from beginning to end, like he was trying to let people know that, like, okay, here are these like stereotypes or archetypes that I put in these movies, but the bottom line is by the end of the movie, they were all talking together, hanging out. And I think he was just trying to, let people know that, we all have all these different facets of our personality, and we're not just this one thing, even though society might want us to be this one thing.
Right. And you kind of saw that, you're right, through the evolution of the movies, where, maybe at the beginning of it, you had characters that were not the normal, air quote, type of person, be it the, you would have had the nerd or the basket case, in the, in the case of Breakfast Club, but towards the end they were accepted by the group.
Definitely.
And so you saw a lot of flavor of that with the John Hughes movies, and throughout all the teen movies of the 80s, is where that was that kind of evolution of, these type of people being accepted, and you even saw that in Weird Science, because at the end, even though they had lost Lisa, Kelly LeBrock, they ended up getting girlfriends, because all of a sudden they were kind of cool.
Yeah. Got confidence.
Or at least, confidence.
Yeah, they got confidence.
Right.
Yep.
That was the only thing about all those movies, is that it always came down to the ending was always, you're happy because you got a significant other now.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I want to
Well,
say.
people like those happy endings.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
but like that always
Well, except for you with
Yeah,
I don't.
I didn't want the happy
That's what I'm
ending.
saying is like, when it came down to it, it's like, well, the end all be all is at least you have somebody, a significant other now.
Yeah. It's funny.
I don't know. Maybe I think that's maybe did that create unrealistic expectations for some of us, perhaps. I think I don't know. For me, I was kind of like.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I don't know, because that, then it makes getting a girl. I mean, she's getting a girl for like for a kid, for a guy is like it's such a huge
and
deal.
it's a huge deal
Yeah.
at a young age even.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
you'll hear like young kids saying like, I just hope I get a girlfriend someday, and you're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you worried about that?
Yeah, at 9 years old.
Like, why are you worried at
why are
9?
you worried at 9 years old about getting a girlfriend?
Someday.
People just worry about that one way too young
Exactly.
nowadays.
Yeah.
But going back into Some Kind of Wonderful, which I know you haven't seen, but just he has a perception at the beginning of the movie around the type of woman that he wants to be, and then at the end he ends up with someone else, who's always been by his side the whole time, because his perception, I suppose, changed during the course of the movie, like we were talking about. So it's very interesting the way that, these movies evolve and the way the perception of these type of characters, just for themselves, internalize. And then also, the view that the people that they're interacting with change.
Right.
Yeah, because essentially, I mean, to break it down for you, I mean, he was completely infatuated with the Leah Thompson character.
Amanda Jones.
Yeah,
Got the name right now this time.
Yeah, and he just thought because she was presented as just like the I don't know, like the stereotypical, like, okay, pretty and all of these things,
Right.
know.
The girl from the right side of the tracks.
Yeah, exactly.
Did she
And-
cook for him?
I don't think
No.
so.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. But it was just one of those. It was like, well, this is what you should aspire to get, and that
Okay.
was just one of those almost like pre-programmed. Like, well, this is what you should be aspiring for. When he's not realizing that his female best friend, who's opinionated and loud, and is ultimately really what he should be with. Is
Right.
essentially, I think, what the
Well, I have
Yeah.
to watch it now.
I recommend it. I
Okay.
recommend it.
And you'll get dirt in your eyes by the end?
Well, it did for me.
Okay.
So, yeah,
I'll make sure I shut the windows or something.
yeah.
Keep the Kleenex handy.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we really digged in deep a lot more than I thought we would with the John Hughes movies, which is fantastic. There are some letters here that were used that I have no idea what they mean.
You've got to take the test now.
Oh,
we'll give you
no.
the link and we'll find out what
Yeah.
you are.
I'm interested.
I am
Well,
too.
yeah.
I am. That's like the thing. It's like I don't want to be like a weirdo and be like, hey, can you take this like long like online test because I really need to know what letters you are right now before I can talk to you any further.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not weird, is it?
I don't know. No,
okay,
I don't
good.
think so.
You can lie to me. It's okay.
Yeah, not weird at all. Okay, I'm gone. No, how long does it take to...
How long about? It's about like maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not like super long.
Oh, that's way too long.
Is that too
No,
long
no,
for
I'm
your
just
attention
kidding.
span?
15,
I'm sorry.
15 minutes is great.
It is, and it is very accurate. And the thing about it is like we said, it's just kind of interesting to know about yourself, and it'll talk about like certain tendencies you may have and things like that, because it's a long series of questions. But the thing that I always think that is great about that, and in the same way that like astrology is great, it's actually looking at how others perceive you.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
there's a part of knowing yourself, and that's one element of it. But then there's also just like knowing about how you are perceived by the outside world, and that's something I know. Like for me personally, I always feel like like people are taking me the wrong way, and so I always look into things like that just to find out more about like how I should be perhaps like presenting myself slightly differently to let the true me shine through better.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's another one of those things, and we'll send you the link.
Yeah, it's fun.
To you can post it on the episode so that everybody else can take the test too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
One other thing I have to bring up, because I've been staring at it the whole time, there's a Voltron t-shirt right here.
Yeah.
And it says, "You complete me." So I just love it.
Because the red lion is not on his arm. It's Voltron minus the red lion.
We had to watch it because I wanted to see a robot made of kitties one time.
Yeah.
And so he's like, and then I'm like, oh, I got the perfect show for you. Then we like got up because we couldn't sleep, and it was, oh, you're watching it. And I'm like, this is so great. And it's like, I love it because it's just amazing.
the same stock footage over and over
Oh,
again.
yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, that's 80s cartoons for you.
There
I
you
loved
go.
it though. I mean, 80s cartoons were great because it was just a vehicle to sell toys.
One of my favorite cartoons was Visionaries. I don't know if you're familiar with them at all. And
they had the
started
shield.
out,
They had the hologram shields, right?
Right. Well, yeah, and in their chest, they were turned into like an animal totem.
Right.
Right, and those evolved from a toy. So they were toys first before they became the cartoon. And it's just interesting the marketing machine behind the 80s that was giving us all those great toys. And somebody says, "Oh, all of a sudden I've got to throw this into a cartoon." And in fact, I made a joke about it when we did the 80s cartoon podcast because I don't understand the logic behind making a cartoon out of Rubik's Cube. I just don't get it. I just do not understand what person greenlighted that. I'll go on the record again to say I still don't get it.
Yeah.
But if there's a listener out there that does, please tweet to me at 80s Reboot and let me know. I don't get it.
It was interesting. I watched I had the DVD of the He-Man stuff, I think.
He-Man, okay.
And
Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, Masters of the Universe. And they were talking about, like, the writers of the show were talking about the fact that, like, they would roll dice. And it would be determined, like, whether or not you were forced to introduce a new character or vehicle in your show that you were writing.
Okay.
And so, like, it would be like... they'd roll the dice and be like, "Oh man, now I have to introduce such and such man, and now I got to figure out how to incorporate such and such man into the show," or right. whatever it was. But I always thought that was really interesting because that was just it. They were like, it was purely a vehicle to sell toys.
Right.
They didn't care about it wasn't like knowing it as half the battle and all that stuff. That was all like secondary. All those PSA things, like the GI Joe thing. It was all just like. Yeah, okay, there might be some kind of like moral story to this, but really we want to sell toys.
Right.
So sell the toys.
I thought it was actually really interesting. Since you're a band guy, GI Joe, there was a link that I posted that it was they had a band within GI Joe,
Viper or something, wasn't it? Or
no. This was actually the Joes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I
not Cold Slither. That was the Cobra Band.
That was the Cobra Band.
That was the name of a band.
Yeah,
that's horrible.
Yeah.
Sorry.
While they were taking over it was mind control. The speakers would put out like subliminal mind control things.
Oh, that's why you watch Gem and the Rockers.
Gem.
That's why you watched that. I watched Gem.
Did you see the movie?
What was the theme song?
I don't remember. Gem is my name. Yeah, I'm not going to sing it right now because you just want me to sing. I know.
But did you see the movie?
I did not see the movie, but I want to. Yeah, I haven't.
Oh, you do want to see it?
I do want to see it.
You're the one person in America that does. Okay.
No, there's more. I've got more friends online that talk about it with me. We want to see it.
There's going to be a group to go see this movie.
Yes, it's a closed group.
You're just waiting for it free,
it's a closed group.
Free
so
movie because you don't want to pay money for
exactly.
it, though. I got you.
There you go.
I think we are pretty good then for our 80s reboot discussions. So if you guys want to do it real quick, how do people find you on social media?
TheCaptainsPod.com. Easiest way to find us. We've got links to all of our shows listed right there.
Right.
You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on the Instagrams, on the Tumblrs, on all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's all on our website, and you can get in touch with us in any way.
Yep.
Outstanding. And I'm Dave. I take care of the 80s Reboot account on Twitter, so that's at 80s Reboot. We're also on Tumblr, which is 80sreboot.tumblr.com, facebook.com/80s Reboot. And if you ever get a chance to email us, it's 80sreboot@gmail.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s and joining me in the Captain's Pod.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.